going to kick off with the Pat O'Connor Tag Team Tournament. This is named after the New Zealand wrestler Pat O'Connor, and he was an NWA World Champion, and he had won his NWA Championship at the Kiel Arena in 1959, which is where this event is taking place. So this is taking place in December 1990, a few months after his death, and this is a tribute. And what a shameful tribute it turns out to be. This wasn't a bad idea. You know, you have teams from all over the world, and it was put there as well to make the Steiner brothers, who are the big team in WCW at this time, they wanted to make them seem like the best in the world. And they did that by essentially putting them against the worst teams from some of the smallest countries all around the globe in what can only be described as the single worst tournament in wrestling history. They try and make a big deal of this. So they have all of the flag bearers at the start coming out. And I've really noticed they don't obviously have a wide racial mix at this point in Atlanta. And so what they do is they bring out all of these ladies representing the different countries. The crowd boo some of the countries. They boo Japan, the Soviet Union. They groan at the mention of Mexico. And the
classics.
The ring announcers actually put in a thing where they sort of go from the Soviet Union, from South Africa, and he goes, from our friends to the south, Mexico, trying to not
remind
get them to boo. The weirdest one is they really strongly boo Canada. They don't like that at all.
They don't seem to like any of them, it seems like. And I think they would have been happy with a wrestling match that just involved flags. Just flags being clacked against each other for 3 hours.
The best thing about the women when they bring them out is they've made a slight nod, even though all of the women are American, Southern sort of beauty queens. The last one to come out is from Japan, and out of all the women, they've chosen the one with the darkest hair who is shortest.
Good,
so
right.
An attempt was made.
An attempt was made. And I'm glad the attempt stopped there with the height and the hair.
I got some sellotape in my back. They also bring out the trophy, which is a 7 foot tall, massive trophy.
Why is it so big?
It wouldn't fit in any of the rooms in my house. I
don't
have
fit in any of the hotel rooms that the wrestlers will be staying in.
Imagine being given it. You go, you are the winners.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're going to have to sort out its own transportation back.
I'm snapping it in half. I'll take the metal bits.
I haven't seen like big trophies for a long time. They seem to be like a real part of my childhood. When I was younger, I was not at all sporty. I'm not at all sporty now. But I used to have lots of friends who had proper like shelves in their room that were just full of little gold and bronze and silver things with footballers on the top. And I used to look at those and I used to think, they must be priceless. That was absolutely breathtaking.
And it was like literally you just bought 5 minutes before the cup final from an engraver's. Right? That's such a lot of storage. How much do you pay per month for your wrestling memorabilia storage?
I popped there during lockdown because I thought, it's probably quite safe. I mean, it's a big enclosed room full of shifty people.
Stuff,
And I did open it up and it was lovely and cool in there. It was a really hot day. And I opened the first box and it was just like, my beautiful
items.
Items. So nice.
Is it all kind of climate controlled and stuff? So you're not going to get a big bloated Hulk Hogan figure?
No, it is all good and it's all air conditioned. But it also caught fire at the start of last year.
Oh no!
And I did have a moment where I just thought, that's everything destroyed, and now I have to think about how I can continue. But thankfully, it didn't affect mine. Just affected the NHS one they have with all the ventilators
PPI,
they need and all the
PPI.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
The important thing is my Sergeant Slaughter memorabilia collection is absolutely mint. I was having a look through a little old WWF magazine the other day, and there was a fantastic section of Sergeant Slaughter about him doing a turn to "I Want My Country Back."
Right.
And it mentioned the usual things that he says, which are largely discredited, that he was a Marine Corps drill instructor. But they have loads of pictures of him at the military cemetery at Arlington, walking through and touching the Marines, things like that. Get your hands off them. Get your hands off them. So disrespectful.
It's supposed to be respectful, but by doing that, you've done the exact opposite of what you're trying to do.
You've pushed it too far, haven't you, Slaughter? You've pushed it too far.
That's why I don't care if I ever wrestle again. I don't care about titles anymore. The reason I'm here today is to ask for their forgiveness, to beg for their forgiveness. For if it's the last breath of air out of this body, I want my country back.
So we have South Africa versus the Steiner brothers.
Colonel de Klerk and Sergeant Kruger.
That's right, yeah. They are former soldiers from South Africa.
Right, okay.
They're not, of course, Pete.
No.
De Klerk was an American wrestler called Ted Petty, who was later better known as Flyboy Rocco Rock, and he was in Public Enemy, who were a big ECW tag team. The other one, who is Sergeant Kruger, I'm going to say it like that. Sergeant Kruger would go on in a couple of years' time to actually be wrestling at a WrestleMania. He was the second Doink, who...
Oh, no.
When Doink won, Matt Bourne, when his drug problems became problematic and kept coming back and back and back, and the WWE fired him, they brought in Sergeant Kruger, who was a wrestler who performed more commonly under the name of Ray Apollo. He would play Doink in a tag team match at WrestleMania 10. Of all of the men you'd see on this card and go, name me, obviously the Steiners, think Lex Luger. Yeah. Who else will be on the WrestleMania 10 card? You'd probably go, is it Sergeant Kruger? You'd be absolutely right.
Well, look, sometimes policemen are allowed, not allowed into schools, they go into schools to, show off a police dog. Yeah. Clowns are also children's entertainers. So that's maybe where their head's at.
They get these two guys, and I like the fact that South Africa at this time in 1990, even in the American Deep South, they are very much a bad guy country.
Yeah.
I really like the fact that they're like, I mean, the reality is the American South are probably quite like South Africa at this point in a lot of ways, but they are international bad guys. It's funny that a country can be a heel. I really like that sort of, that mad wrestling idea that, a country would be full of heels. Well, saying they're former soldiers from South Africa as well really hints the fact that they sort of go, yeah, they're involved with
it somehow.
At the top level.
Yeah.
With the worst thing of all, the South African government. Magic. The Steiner brothers at this point are two of the single most frightening men on earth, and I don't think they've ever been more frightening than they are in this tournament. Because they come in knowing this is there to make them look good, they've got an idea of going, well, we'll just get through these really quick matches, and they have two in succession that are very, very quick, and they decide to do it, instead of going, we'll do it and look really efficient and effective, we will make it clear that everyone we're up against until we get to the final is beneath contempt. And so they just beat the shit out of people really violently.
And very quickly as well.
Very quickly. But they also, Rick Steiner in this, there's a bit where Colonel de Klerk, who is Flyboy Rocco Rock, jumps out of the ring, does a sort of somersault over the ropes, and is going to land on Rick Steiner. Yeah. And at the time, that would have been a very, very exciting and fresh move. And what happens is he slightly falls short. So his feet, as he goes over, they sort of hit Rick Steiner on the chest.
Right.
And he just weirdly slides down Rick Steiner. But Steiner, instead of going, I've been hit, like you would expect a professional to do, he's just like, I'm not selling this.
I'm not selling that.
And he laughs. He just goes, and the crowd go, fucking yes! It's just weird. He could have sold it.
Yeah.
And he's in such a position of just going, I'm not even going to try in this match. I'm not going to try to make these guys look good. I am simply going to be unprofessional because I want to show my contempt for the people beneath me.
Yeah, and this whole thing, even though this is meant to make us look good, Scott Steiner could not look much more different than he does in my mind.
Yeah.
Every time I picture him in my nightmares.
For me, there's a funny thing about this is what Scott Steiner looks like. Because this is when I first knew him and thought he was one of the great wrestlers you'd ever seen. And he was a huge pioneer. He was an innovator. He was a big guy, a really strong guy. He was just all-out offense. He was stiff, but he was also doing things like the tilt-a-whirl suplex and then the tilt-a-whirl backbreaker, the Frankensteiner. He was unlike anyone else. When I stopped watching wrestling and came back to it much later, he turned into a monster. He turned into this terrifying, sexual, bleached-haired lump that just didn't look like the other man. It was like that man had died and another man had taken on his identity.
His name,
And I've always found that Scott Steiner to be the one that I can't get my head round. I don't think there's anyone who at the start of their career looks so different by the end. If it turned out they went, of course, they weren't the same person, you made a terrible error there, I would go, well, that does make sense.
Yes, yeah.
The whole thing is just weird. Jim Ross on here uses the line that is more overused in WCW than any other, which as soon as one of the Steiner brothers appears, Jim Ross will tell you that they graduated from the University of Michigan.
Both brothers wrestled collegiately at the University of Michigan. And both the brothers from Detroit, both All-Americans at Michigan. Steiner's mom and dad watching this event back in Michigan. They're very proud of their sons representing Michigan.
Paul Lee does a line that really made me laugh here. So Jim Ross is going, both graduated from the University of Michigan. And Paul Heyman just says, and both are illiterate too, I understand. and Jim Ross is really annoyed. And Jim Ross goes, no, you're wrong. And there's a pause. And he
I've
goes,
seen them read.
They graduated like that.
The Steiners, of course, from Detroit, 499 combined weight. The current U.S. Tag Champ is the #1 seed in the tournament. Both brothers wrestle collegiately at the University of Michigan.
And both are illiterate, too, I believe.
No, you're wrong.
Oh, okay.
They graduated.
Really, Jim, the man, mate, let it go.
It's wrestling, mate. Don't worry about it.
I don't need to know about their fucking B-Techs and their course modules.
Wrestling is vocational at best.
The reality is, going to the University of Michigan does not set you up for being a great tag team. The thing that set them up for being a great tag team was they were incredibly stiff, a little bit unprofessional, and really exciting. You might be interested to know, of course, the South African team, they actually, to qualify for this, they beat the African team, who were called Botswana Beast and Kahlua.
Wow.
Kahlua is the drink.
Yes, Jesus.
Yeah, that's
They
close.
didn't have to go far from the hotel bar for that idea, did they?
What would an African name be? Kahlua? Yes, that will do.
That'll do.
I am certainly not going to be checking whether that is
Christ
an
on a bike.
African drink.
Let me ask you a question. Who paid for all these plane tickets from Africa?
Well, I'm a World Championship Wrestling, of course. They only bring the fans the very best from around the world.
And they won't even pick me up from the airport in a limousine, and they fly 4 guys in from Africa just for the fans at home?
Sergeant Kruger and Kahlua in there. And Kahlua starting out very quickly.
We go quickly to a little interview bit that has Missy Hyatt, who was WCW's sort of pin-up interviewer, with Alexandra York and Michael Wall Street. And she has a computer program that will work out how quickly Wall Street will be able to defeat his opponent.
This is right up my street. Very enjoyable. She's brought a little computer. I think it might be a word processor. I don't think it can do any computationals, but it's a lovely bit of work, and I don't think it's even turned on.
No,
enjoyable.
absolutely.
My computer has figured out that. I can't remember what she sort of says is going to happen, but it's
8:32. He will definitely lose within 8 minutes 32. I like the fact that the computer is like, I do need a margin of error. Every single time you could just go, I think one of them's going to win in under an hour. You know?
But that is Terry Runnell.
It is, yes.
Right.
Later Marlena and later Terry, the wife of Dustin Rhodes. The thing about the computer, I think, is like, maybe it can just see the running sheet that lists the winner and then the times.
Yeah.
Maybe someone's typed up the running list, the running order on that computer. All it's done is it saved it.
This is what my computer says.
Terry has read the running order and gone, this computer is very clever.
Oh, it's a lovely bit of technology. You look at it and you go, oh, it's so 80. You see it in the Argos catalogue. Lovely.
I remember when this was out, I remember thinking, that is amazing that a computer, they can probably do that, can't they? You would type in Terry Taylor
versus
win-loss and it would go...
Well,
if you'd have said to Alexandra York, the thing that you're saying soon will be available to everyone, she would have gone, I mean, what a wonderful world.
I know, right?
What a wonderful world. Let's quickly run through the royal family, Rip Morgan and Jacques Victory, versus the Japanese team of Mr. Saito and the Great Muta. As they bring in Jacques Victory and Rip Morgan, who are representing New Zealand, they make it very clear that Jack Morgan is from Seaside Heights, very explicitly saying to us he's not actually from New Zealand.
Yeah.
Collar and elbow tie-up, Jacques Victory and the Great Muta. Victory was born in New Jersey, ironically enough.
He was born in Seaside Heights.
And
have you ever been to Seaside Heights?
No, I have not.
If you had ever been to Seaside Heights, you know why he moved out of the country.
What you have here is you have a terrible clash of ability. You have the worst of the 80s American wrestlers in Morgan and Victory, and you have, a Japanese style which doesn't mesh. It's worth saying all of the matches they put together within this, none of the styles mesh. They're all from their own countries. You would think maybe the Mexican and British one would. It doesn't.
Right.
It's all just a big style clash. Paul Heyman says at one point, I thought Muta might have been the Black Scorpion. I was thinking, that is a much better thing to have done.
Yeah.
For the main event, that would have made sense. Don't flag up better ideas than the ones you've actually gone with later.
Well, I tell you what, this shoots one of my theories right down the drain. I thought Muta could have actually been the Black Scorpion. I thought it might have been. I mean, if you listen to all the hints, it's a guy that hates Sting, and Muta had that long-running feud with Sting, so it's not Muta. I thought it could have been. Just scratch this out over here and go on with the match.
The end goes all wrong here as well. There's a German suplex by Muta on Victory, and Victory sort of rolls out by accident. So the ref stops the count, and then Victory sort of gets back into position, and then he counts all the three. just, just fucking, no one cares. Don't sort of go, now is the time in this match to go, let's make sure that the role of wrestling referee is not one that is mocked. Let's stick to the rules. Saito does a little chat afterwards. Saito is under the impression he can speak English. I'm not 100% sure he does.
What would happen in the finals should the two of you face the number 1 seed, the Steiner brothers?
Steiner brothers. It's the beauty of American wrestlers. We too soft. We are more strong. We are best in the world. We are number 1.